So thank you for joining us today for our virtual Meet the Expert workshop. My name is David and I'm part of the My World Work Live team here at Skills Development Scotland. My World Work Live is about helping you to understand future careers and what skills they might need. So in today's session, we're going to cover a quick overview of planning in the engineering sector. We're going to look at some opportunities in the sector. And then I'm going to introduce you to David Jensen of Glacier Energy. We'll also allow you the opportunity to ask any questions you may have. I'd like to encourage as many of you to get involved as possible, so please use the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen to ask us questions as we go through, and we'll try to answer as many as possible. I'd just like to let you know that today's session is being recorded so that young people who couldn't make it today can still access the resources. It will be available for everybody to watch on the My World of Work YouTube channel. That means you can go back and rewatch everything that has been talked about today. Also, please don't worry, everything you ask today can be anonymous, and if you'd prefer, you can select that option in the question and answer box. So let's quickly have a look at some of the information in the engineering sector before passing across to David. So the top employing regions in 2021 for engineering were Aberdeen City and Shire, which was 38,600 people. Glasgow region was around 23,000 people, Edinburgh, East and Mid Lothian 18,100, Lanarkshire around 13,000 and Fife about 10,000. The total employment in Scottish engineering in 2021 was 150,400 people. So between 2021 and 2024, the workforce is expected to grow by about 2.1% or 3,100 people. They're expecting the workforce size in 2024 by 2024 to be 153,500 people. It's expected another 4,400 people will be needed to replace those leaving the field either through retirement or other reasons as well. So that means between 2021 and 2024, you're looking at about 7,500 people that will be needed in the engineering field. So the salary, the mean salary for engineering is around 33,300, and your routes of entry, so you can get in by apprenticeship using foundation apprenticeships, which you can do alongside your subjects in the senior phase, modern apprenticeships, which is the release to college where you work in an employment, and graduate apprenticeships where you go to university alongside being in employment. And of course you have routes into the sector through college and through university degree as well. So what we'll do now, let me introduce you to David Jensen, who will give you a lot more information about the engineering sector. So David is a QHSC manager and technical authority. He's worked in engineering and quality professional leadership roles. David has worked in a lot of different areas, and I'll let him say a bit more about that, but some of them are things like marine, nuclear, weapons, warship inspection, and various other roles. He's also commercially licensed. David left school at 16 and he's gained all his qualifications while he's been employed. So I'd just like to hand over to you, David, and just let you tell the students a wee bit about yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. I was a civil servant for 30 years with the Ministry of Defence in a number of different areas. I started life out in an apprenticeship with British Steel, fabrication and welding, so a traditional, what we'd call heavy industry, sheet metal work, that sort of thing. British Steel went out of business when I was a wee boy, long before any of you were around. So I decided to pay for my own follow-on sort of ordinary national certificate at Fife College, I think it's called now, or Adam Smith College. I then went on to do the higher national diploma at Napier University, at which point the Ministry of Defence interviewed me and sponsored me on a bursary, which was great. Quickly, I became the design authority for nuclear propulsion and nuclear submarines down in Bath for about 5-6 years. I then had a stint as a marine surveyor, so people who sail with the ships, looking at things that have gone wrong, so they could come into places like Rosyth and Devonport and Portsmouth to get fixed, basically. After that, I moved into programme management, which was for torpedoes. I knew design torpedo, which was really interesting, you know, having to fire torpedoes under ice, etc. The Russians weren't as aggressive back then, so we're looking at different types. It's gone in full circle now. From torpedoes, I became an engineering authority, so the pinnacle, I suppose, of MOD engineering for air-launched weapons, the bunker buster, which was used in Iraq, the second Iraq War, and most recently in Libya, zero collateral damage air-launched weapon. I then became a national acceptance rep on a multinational project called A400M, which is the airplane featured in Mission Impossible Rogue Nation at the start, when Tom Cruise hangs off the side. After A400M, I was head of the aircraft carrier project. I'm sure you've all seen those huge ships, the biggest ships we've ever built. I was then head of engineering up in Faslane at the submarine base, and I had a few secondments through that time for team complex weapons and quality assurance. I've had some contracting stint as a statutory inspection authority for wind turbines, and I now work in Glacier Energy, the design heat exchangers. They're looking at carbon capture. We also do a lot of non-destructive testing and inspection on the manufacture of wind turbines, mobile machining and weld-clad. So yeah, that's my 35-year career in a few minutes.
That's very impressive, and it's like I say, you've been through quite a few different areas. So what we'll do is we'll start with an easy question, just ease you into the session. So tell us a bit about what you currently do in your role at the minute.
Yeah, so the role at the minute is quality assurance and health, safety and environmental manager for the group. So what happens there is I'm responsible for all the processes and procedures and engineering work instructions to make sure that everybody does their job correctly. I'm responsible for auditing, checking people, accepting work, doing what's called in-process checks, making sure that everybody's trained. So using my experience through the years to make sure that everybody's what we call SQEP, suitably qualified and experienced personnel. Everything from being an apprentice up to having to have a master's degree. We're also a technical authority for an inspection, but we're an inspection body, so that's through the United Kingdom Accreditation Service. So we inspect other people's kit and basically certify that the kit's safe to use, no matter what that kit is. On a day-to-day basis, it's very different. We get audited as well. We have a lot of people over in the Netherlands and Belgium. We've got work in Kazakhstan, new contract in China, Africa. The guys are very highly skilled, and a lot of them enjoy that. But under UCAS, we have to do what's called technical surveillance. So every now and again, we just go and see what the guys are doing and make sure that everything's okay for them. But it's not all about checking up on people. It's about helping people and making things easier and saving time and money. That's basically my role at the moment.
Excellent. So you've obviously had quite a wide and varied career. What would you say is the most challenging part of your current job, and through your whole career, would you feel the most challenging thing you've had to work on is?
The most challenging thing I've ever worked on was the weapon systems during time of war. Having to attest that the weapons that weren't quite ready, so the design wasn't finished yet, to be able to use them early. That was the most engineering, technically challenged thing. Everything's on your head. You're signing it off. So if anything goes wrong, you know, the worry beads there. The most challenging thing that I've learned throughout my career really is to become a people person. You don't really get anything, you know, by being aggressive or, you know, being red, being ginger-haired like myself, like what I was when I was wee. Being able to read people, you know, everybody's different. Everybody has different personalities, and there's different ways to deal with people. But I think the most challenging thing is to make sure that you don't force your opinions on people, that you always go with what we call objective evidence. Engineering is unfortunately all about professional judgment at times. So the biggest skill And the biggest challenge is to actually make a decision with incomplete data. So, you know, if you've only got 8 parts of the 10, you need to make an engineering judgment through what you've learned. Maybe do some hard sums, but, you know, they don't always work. Yeah.
Excellent. So, I mean, you were saying about becoming a people person there. So, do you feel their skills you had when you started, or the skills that you've developed later on, or?
Well, it depends what route you take, but you know, I went a wee bit a long way around. The first time I came across psychology or people was during my degree. So they do a wee bit there, but it doesn't really teach you. I think taking hard knocks has learned me a lot. So no, I wasn't. I was Scottish. I was ginger. I was from Fife. I knew everything at the age of 21. I knew I had the ability as an engineer, but you know, you have to respect your elders. I think still you need to take the knocks. Theory doesn't always work. As I say, E equals MC squared, the famous equation, doesn't work. It's theoretical. There's other variables that come in. So it's just learning through time that the best way to get results is to work together, collaboration, and use everybody in your team. If you're working alone, fine, you've got yourself, but you know, everybody has different attributes, whether that be software or electronics or mechanical or whatever you need as a team. And then when you get into engineering management, it's then taking that judgment and making the right decision, but always listening to everybody. Sitting on the fence is probably not going to get you anywhere in engineering. There's always an end result.
Yeah, excellent. So, what would you say the most enjoyable parts of your job are, and what's the thing you've worked on that you're maybe the proudest of?
Current job, most enjoyable part is working with people, constantly working with people, helping people. I'm an institute mentor. I'm still a mentor for the Ministry of Defence. So seeing people develop, no questions stupid, and being able to take those people forward and see some of them in very high positions and well-paid jobs these days is very rewarding. The most challenging, the most rewarding is seeing the end result. So probably, you know, I had a stint in Saudi Arabia as well. That was difficult, transforming, you know, work to the Saudis, industrial transformation. Achieving that was huge. Delivery of A400M, again, the airplane that was in Mission Impossible, was a great achievement. Working with 6 different countries, cultural differences, learning about that as well. Everybody has different approaches to engineering and to life. The Storm Shadow weapon system, running Faz Lane, and I suppose being the guy that signed for the aircraft carriers. You know, so head on the block stuff.
Aye.
If an airplane falls out of the sky, even still, I've left there 4 or 5 years now. It will still be me in front of the wee man with the curly wig and cop. So, yeah, there's too much to tell the truth. Engineering's a really rewarding career.
Even just listening to you talk about that, the breadth of stuff that you've been involved with is impressive. So, at the start, we were talking about how your qualifications you've gained. You know, you've kind of, since the age of 16, you've kind of been working while you've been doing a lot of this. Could you tell us a wee bit about how you got started, and you know, how you done your qualifications, because you've quite an interesting start to your career as well.
Yeah. I mean, I always wanted to be. I mean, when I was 16, everybody, it wasn't a norm to go to university straight from school. The norm was finding an apprenticeship. I found an apprenticeship at the bottom of the hill in Methil, where I lived. And as I said earlier, British Steel went at a demise, but I always wanted to be an engineer. My view of what an engineer was back then was probably what a lot of people's view of engineer is: the guy that comes and fixes your washing machine, a welder. That's not really an engineer, to tell the truth. Once you're an engineer, you're either incorporated or chartered with an institute. It's more a technician level, that, but still very, very interesting roles. Yeah, my dad was an engineer. I would call an engineer. He worked in defence as well. He worked in oil and gas, and unfortunately worked away a lot as well. So there is an impact. You have, sometimes you have to go where the work is. I just always wanted to better myself, really. Believe it or not, I'm the youngest of four, and I'm the first person to get a degree. And for an MSc, the rest of my family all went the traditional route and ended up with what we'd call trades careers, which there's nothing wrong with. It's really interesting as well. But yeah, when the MOD came along, it was the nervous jump. I knew I would have to move away from home.
Yeah.
As well, but it opened up cultures. I spent a long time down in Bath and London, Bristol, Portsmouth, Saudi Arabia, Toulouse, Bremen in Germany, Ankara in Turkey. But the qualifications, there was someone there. As long as you show aptitude, your employer will help you. Most employers will help you. So a lot of the qualifications I've gained have been vocational through my employer paying for them. Even psychology, law, French, learned business French through the MOD, and MSc quality management, engineering degree, H&D. It's been a long route, but I've enjoyed it, and I'm still studying now, unfortunately, because we work overseas, and I'm having to get overseas qualifications because of Brexit, which c'est la vie.
No, it's very interesting, and it's a good point that when you go out and you work in a job, you will have the opportunity to keep progressing. But I want to go back to something, and I've got a question here I want to ask it that relates to what you said at the start. So when you were starting off, who or what influenced you to kind of move into the career that you've moved into?
Yeah, well, as I said, my brother was, this is an old thing. You won't find many of these in Scotland. He was a textile technician. He fixed the looms, for making material. As I said, my dad was an engineer. I'm a huge motorcyclist. I was always getting into trouble by taking my brother's bike to bits and losing parts, and I raced motocross when I was wee. So things mechanical and technical always interested me. It was a wee bit before computers and mobile phones and all that sort of stuff, but you need to keep abreast with these things and just move forward. But influence wise, my influences when I was wee engineering wise was guys like Barry Sheen. You've probably never heard of them, you guys, a motorcyclist. And
I know Barry Sheen.
and there used to be a program on TV. I know you get the Royal Institute lectures, and I've done some things like that, not at that level, but tomorrow's world, looking at future technology, then we could go back and laugh at some of that now, would be in flying cars. But now, although interestingly, Hungary do have a flying car now, and they're trialing it as we speak. But yeah, mainly family. I just always thought engineering was, really, really interesting. Being able to take stuff, fix stuff, and come up. Even today, as I said before we came on, I've installed my own air source heat pump. I've got a solar battery that I'll be installing this afternoon, etc. So what it does as well is it saves you a hell of a lot of money when you're a wee bit older, especially if you've got the license to do it. You could do your own electricity and your own building works and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's good to get to a role where I don't have to get my hands dirty anymore. I'm just managing, but it really stands me in good stead at home. I still get my hands dirty at home.
Aye, awesome. So the next question I'd like to ask you, it's actually two questions, but I'm going to kind of roll them together. And it's because you've got such a different breadth of experience. So obviously you've done sort of college and university, and you've been in the workplace as well. But what kind of value do you think the different routes have? Because obviously you can go through university or college, and you can go through apprenticeships, and they both have different advantages. What would you say the advantages are that you've found when you've been doing these different?
Yeah, obviously my experience is doing the one route. It's maybe a mixed route because I got sponsored later on, which you can anyway. You showed interestingly the graduate apprenticeships. I know Babcock and that are doing that at the moment. I think it depends on your learning style and who you are as a person. If you like getting involved and really vocationally learning, so I don't know if you want to be a gas technician or a wind turbine technician, or a marine engineer. the sort of graduate apprenticeship stroke modern apprentice route is the one I'd recommend. If you're really, aspiring to go PhD eventually or masters, yeah, there's nothing wrong with the full graduate route. I think the graduate route, some of me says, well, I maybe would have got where I got to, which was senior civil service, and in Scotland that's quite rare. A lot quicker if I'd mucked in it, if I'd been better at school. I was a wee daft laddie at school, to tell you the truth. I had a motorcycle. I was always going to leave at 16 because I didn't really like school. But in hindsight, it's good to see a lot of people that actually, I think school's changed a lot. And yeah, if I'd got maybe I never had the qualifications to go direct to a degree. I had 8 O grades, and I think I told you before, I went into engineering. I took engineering science, but didn't take maths, which was one of the hardest things. I'd just say, sticking at school, then your options are open. But even if you get disappointed, you don't get results you were hoping for, there's always a route.
Aye.
I've proven that. I've gone, and as I say, I made senior civil servant. I mean, no putting glassy eyes on you, but you mentioned the salary earlier. You could triple that if you do well in engineering. That's your base. So you reach for the sky. You end up with a good life. But route-wise, I'd be open to it. I would take your careers advice, see what your grades are, but never give up. I mean, it's not going to take you that long to get where you want to be, as long as you muck in and you have that ambition.
Excellent. I think that's brilliant advice, actually, because there's always a different way forward, and what works for one person isn't necessarily the best route for another person. So that's some excellent advice there. So you were talking a wee bit about school subjects there, so I'm going to hit you up for some advice. If some of the students are thinking about engineering as a career, regardless where they think they're going, what sort of subjects do you think are the biggies, the ones that would help them move forward?
Yeah, well, engineering is a wide subject. Remember, I'm a multidisciplinary engineer due to my career, but I've had to requalify every time, airworthiness for airplanes, for etc. But if you want to go to the sort of, I mean, you get chemical engineering, for example, moving into pharmaceuticals. But my wife's a scientist. Sorry, I got a bad quality thing up there. Hope it's okay. Yeah, right. My wife's a scientist at Roslyn. She took that route, chemistry, biology. People forget that engineering is a science as well. So you also got the more software side. So software engineering. If you do these sort of subjects at school, it's not something we really did. When I was at school, when I was leaving school, we had one room with computers in, and we were learning BBC Basic, which was my introduction to that. If you want to be a design engineer, design and make, engineering, science, physics, maths is really important. But as I said earlier, through experience, most universities are still stuck in the 70s and 80s when it comes to access. If you're talking hires or A-level equivalent or whatever, you're talking 2 science subjects and English. I don't know why English, given the way English is used a lot these days. But yeah, I'd say physics is the most widespread advantage to being an engineer.
Yeah, excellent. So you were saying, obviously, you were saying there you were a multidiscipline engineer. So what sort of disciplines have you worked across then?
Well, I started, obviously I started my apprenticeship, which would be based as a trade. But I learned a lot of what you call metrology then, so measurements and precision engineering. To finish the apprenticeship, I had a wide range. I was making everything from darts to control boxes to bus stops. But then with the MOD, I was always destined to be what they call mechanical marine. So that'd be, propulsion, naval architecture, stability, structures, piping systems, condensers, generators, propellers, all that sort of stuff. But during the time, there was a forecast shortage of electrical. So when we were going to come out, the training was trainee incorporated engineer. we were going to come out at a time. They thought there was going to be a shortage. There was, luckily, I was one of the guys that got to stay where I wanted to be, so I ended up in the Nuclear Submarine Design Authority. When you become a design authority, you take a section of the vessel. So I had the reactor compartment to the tail, the stern. So you have to learn everything about, because what you've got is submariners at sea. I mean, if you've seen Vigil, it's a wee bit far-fetched. And yeah, it was my mate that was the advisor on that programme. But you need to learn the systems, you need to understand the operation of what you're working on. And, you know, guys at sea that may have a problem sending signals, and you need to come up with a quick answer for them. So that's in service engineering. When it comes to how I've got to where I am, multidisciplinary, submarines, when I moved to torpedoes, I just saw that, just apply it and think of a system of systems, don't be overawed by it, just break it down. It's a tiny submarine with no people on it. I then moved to air-launched weapons, so I moved from what you call hydrodynamics to aerodynamics. And I just took it as the weapon was a torpedo that flies. Then the first time I questioned myself, because I had to go move into what's called airworthiness. And one of these airplanes crashed in Seville, killing 3 people. Back to objective evidence. So airworthiness to me, the airplane was just a weapon with people on it. And then eventually the aircraft carrier was bringing all my career together. Lots of clever people working for me from all different companies in the MOD, but having to make the decisions on the safety and being able to accept the items into service.
Excellent. So, so COVID is something that has affected every day. Has it affected how you do your job much, and how, you know, the sectors worked?
Well, the sector I'm in now, in fact, the sector that I left, defence, you're not going to get. I mean, in HQ, I know Abbey Wood, which is the UK headquarters for defence, 18,500 people, biggest office block in Europe. Most of that has been mothballed during COVID, because people are working, you know, on IT mainly and making decisions, and the technology moved forward there. The energy sector and the renewable sector no really had a choice, especially the guys on the ground in Netherlands and Belgium. They've all had to continue working, because you can't do without electricity, for example. Yep. And the plan is to get these wind turbines built and installed to meet net zero. It's affected. I mean, I've been able to work from home more, but because of the nature of my work as well, I can't do technical surveillance from my house. So I need to. So it's affected me psychologically as well. But you know, one thing about the career I've been through, it has built a strength and a robustness to the way I think. But you know, if you're used to being able to go to Amsterdam and Rotterdam, have a few beers, you know, go out, meet friends in the evening and stuff, but then suddenly you can't leave your hotel. Same hotel room every night. It definitely affects you. But I think what's been demonstrated worldwide is the robustness and the ability to adapt. I think to begin with in COVID, things did take a plummet. But now you could see that new ways of working, and that's just some very clever people that have come up with making sure that Teams and Zoom and all sorts of other stuff have worked. So, you know, the carbon footprint of the planet's plummeted as well, isn't it? So it could only be a good thing.
Well, there is that. So I've got a couple of questions here that are coming in from students. So the first one is, I think you've answered a wee bit of this, but we'll go over this one again. So what subjects do you need to be good at in school, and what's it like to do all of those jobs that you have done?
Yeah, well, it's I mean, firstly, the job-wise, it's very rewarding. You know, very, very proud. At times, it's very difficult and frustrating. But you learn by your mistakes. You know, the man who makes no mistakes makes nothing. Subject-wise, as I said, maths. I didn't take maths. I got some self-study books, etc. And I don't recommend it. Maths, calculus, physics, I would say are the most important, and science subject that point towards what you want to do.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to be a software engineer or work in Dundee in the games world, you know that's the way you want to do. But there's a lot of maths involved. I wouldn't get scared by maths, because the type of maths involved in engineering makes sense. So if you take fluid dynamics or thermodynamics, you know, the gravity, the speed, even into, I mean, defense and space are together. So that's the other thing, I suppose. When you move into aerospace as well, you understand space. It's called aerospace for a reason. So
Yeah.
you can also move into, you know, there's a lot of companies in Glasgow making satellites. They're building a space centre on the west coast of Scotland, which is really interesting. We've got the observatory in Edinburgh, which is a great career. I know a guy that works there. So, I mean, Scotland is really, really rich. I think the numbers that you put up at the beginning are conservative.
Yeah.
I think Scotland has the ability to lead the world, really. And look at the movie industry as well. There's lots of engineers involved in the studios near Cambuslang, and the Scottish studio that's going to be built in the Pentlands as well. So yeah, it's just been really rewarding, really enjoyable.
Excellent. So I've got a question here, which is, how long did it take you to qualify to be an engineer?
Right. Okay. So technically wise, tradesman, it's your apprenticeship. So you're talking these days 3 to 4 years. Then you're a tradesman. With the MOD, I joined the MOD when I was 21, and it was a 2-year program to become an incorporated engineer with Institute of Mechanical Engineers. So that was a program at the same time you did what was called I think up here it's called an SVQ. It was an NVQ down there, level 4 in marine engineering management, which is a bunch of modules that again, enjoyable. So you go to your work, and then one day a week I went down to Bath College and we did some traditional stuff that, in addition to, I mean, some stuff I'd done before, so some stuff was reasonably easy, and new stuff like naval architecture, that sort of thing. So when I was 23, I became an incorporated engineer and a design authority. So that's me qualified. I didn't become a chartered engineer until, well, wow, it seems like yesterday, but it's actually 20 years ago. Yeah. So the incorporated engineer, yeah, good career, technician level, they call it. And then chartered engineer, if you're going to get into the scary, it's not scary, but the scary stuff of having to put your name to things. So I mentioned earlier, you know, unfortunately, an aeroplane that I rejected down in Bristol because it had a defective wing. The Turkish Air Force decided to take it at cut price, and it actually only lasted 3 minutes and killed 3 guys that worked for me in Seville. So there's big investigation, but, you know, hand on heart, I knew I'd done the right thing. So yeah.
Excellent. So what I'm going to do is we're quickly getting towards the end of the session. There's so much more we can be asking you, so I'm going to go through some quick questions. Okay. So what wage do you start on, and what's the highest wage you can get to? I don't expect you to know everything about engineering sector, so if we just go for your personal experience, what did you?
Yeah, I'd have to extrapolate this to the modern day, but I started on £6,000 a year, so you can work that out at 89. I think these days in the Ministry of Defence, I could take, which is a civil service, usually a wee bit less paid. Now, I will say I can't speak for family-run businesses or small, tiny wee business, but reasonable organisations. You're talking as an apprentice, you're probably on between 18 and £24,000 a year.
Yeah.
Some, in fact, in the rail industry, the apprentices are on £29,000 a year. So if you take Craig and Tinney Rail Depot in Edinburgh, I know I've got mentees that work in there, and they're on a good amount of money for a 17-year-old, 18-year-old person. When you become a technician level engineer, you're probably on between 36 to about 44. A chartered engineer is when you're in the realms, 50 up.
Yeah.
But in a really senior position, it ranges from, I'd say, 60 to 150.
Excellent. That's good. It gives people a nice idea of the ranges, but obviously if they're interested, they can go look at different kinds of apprenticeships to get an idea of their starting wages as well, but that gives them an idea of where they can get to. So I've got a question here, actually, which Were you ever worried that you'd be exposed to high levels of radiation while working on a nuclear weapon? So that's a question for a student.
Well, yeah, I never worked in nuclear weapons, so Trident, yeah, there was weapons on board. No, because I was a civilian, I'm sorry I made the Daft Navy go in for me. So if you were to go into the reactor compartment, you used monitoring, so there's a certain amount of levels that you're allowed. Working on a nuclear submarine, you actually get more radioactive living in Aberdeen or Cornwall. There's more radon gas comes from the granite in Cornwall and Aberdeen than you get on a nuclear submarine. If you were to go and open the reactor compartment, you're dead, as in the reactor itself. But no, it's quite a safe operation. The fuel rods are within a controlled area, they're shielded, so I was never frightened of that. But yeah, when I was wee, I used to get the Navy to go in the reactor compartment, so my dose was low anyway.
Excellent. So I am going to ask you one more question, I think, and then I'll wrap it up. So obviously we were talking about apprenticeships earlier on. So actually, I might ask you two questions because there's two questions I'd like to ask you. But the first one is, does Glacier Energy do apprenticeships?
Yeah, we do. We've got apprenticeships in Glasgow and the machining solutions and the welding side. There's apprenticeships in there. There's apprenticeships in Aberdeen on the heat exchanger, and yeah, at the moment we've got 4 or 5 apprentices in non-destructive testing. So we do. I mean, it's not a huge amount, but yeah, they do.
Excellent. And the last thing is, I've got a question here, which is, as a school pupil, is there ways that I can get involved to prepare for entry to engineering, so in school? Yeah,
as I say, yeah, there is. I mean, there's loads. The internet's there for self-study, obviously. Excuse me, looking at that sort of thing. But internships are very important. So, Babcock do them, BA Systems do them, we do them. Giving the opportunities of young people to come in for a few weeks and there's summer holidays. Not the 7 weeks, but 2 to 3 weeks just to get a grasp of whether they would enjoy that sector or not.
Aye, get a bit of experience and understand more what it's like. All right, I think that's all we've got time for, and we're going to call it there. So I'd just like to say thanks very much, David, for coming in today and talking to the students. So what we can do is you can find more about careers at myworldofwork.co.uk. If you're interested in anything that David has spoken today regarding Glacier Energy, you can go to glacierenergy.com to find more information about that. You'll find more information on My World of Work about choices to help you make for your career. If you need some inspiration on what to do, there's tools there that will help you understand your strengths and lots of job profiles. So what David said, if you're interested in engineering, it's worth having a look through the different kinds of engineering to see what different fields there are, and there's job profiles for all of those on My World of Work. So also we have apprenticeships.scot, so that is the apprenticeships website, and if you're interested in more information on digital careers, we've got digitalworld.net. You can also speak to your school careers advisor. They will have much more information and guidance for you on a one-to-one basis. Well, that's us come to the end of the session. I'd just like to say a big thank you to David for taking the time to join us today and providing an insight into his job role and his work history. I hope I found it really interesting, and I hope you did too. And thank you to everyone who's taken the time to join us. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day.